Alright guys, welcome back. Today, I've got a very special rifle for you. Probably my favorite rifle, my favorite bolt gun, and it's my oldest bolt gun that I have in my collection. I've had this rifle for probably close to 2 years now, and I just haven't gotten around to shooting video for it. But now here we are. So what we have before us is a US-made Krag Jørgensen rifle. Now, Krags are very unique because of their magazine system, which we'll go over here in just a few minutes. But let's go over a brief history of it. So the Krag was designed in 1886, and in 1893, the U.S. adopted it after going through a bunch of trials with a bunch of other competitor rifles, and it went into service in, I believe, 1894. And it only served for 12 years. It's one of the U.S.'s shortest ran, I believe it is the U.S.'s shortest ran service rifle. Basically, it didn't last very long because when they were in Cuba and they were up against Spanish-made Mausers, they realized that this magazine system just wasn't really competitive with the Mausers. To me, the magazine system is what makes this gun really unique. But so after about 12 years, the U.S. replaced it with the Springfield that we all know, which was pretty much copied directly from the Mauser action, and there's a bunch of history on that. If I ever get my hands on one of those, I'll go through all that history. But anyway, so these served in most notably in the Philippines and in Cuba. So this particular one here that I have, I can't confirm the exact date on it. I mean, I could from the serial numbers. I believe it's a 96, if I believe, in 1896. The problem I can't, why it's hard for me to go through and confirm the date, because somebody at some point, when these rifles weren't valuable or collectible, drilled some holes to mount a scope on it. And when they drilled them right on top of the S for Springfield and on top of the last two digits for the model date. So I can only speculate on this here. I haven't really looked at the serial number. I believe it's a 96, but I do have one good clue, and that's here on the stock. You can see the acceptance mark for the U.S., and that is dated 1896. So I'm gonna go with it is 1896. Now, when I picked this rifle up, I got it in a pawn shop. I paid about $8.50 for it, which, in the condition, that's still okay. But it had a scope mount and a scope. I'll post a picture of what it looked like when I first got it, and it didn't have any rear sight. It took me a while to track down the rear sight I wanted, and I actually went ahead and did a different model rear sight, which is now actually loose, which is probably why it was shooting a little off. But we'll get into that here in a little bit when I bring it in and we talk about the specific functions of it. But, these guns they're collectible, they're old, and the biggest downside to them is the cartridge. So, what these use is what's called US 30 cal, but it's most commonly known as 3040 Krag here in the US. Now, these were chambered in a few different cartridges. There was the original cartridge was like an 8.7 millimeter. Whatchamacallit here? I think I have it pulled up. Yeah, it's like an 8 by 58 millimeter Danish Krag, which would have been the very first cartridge this was chambered in. And then it was chambered in, of course, 3040. And then the cartridge that I would love to find one of these in is 6.5 by 55 Swedish. Now, this gun in 6.5 by 55 would be a sweet shooting gun. Part of that is the action on these are so buttery. It's, I mean, yeah, there's wiggle, but man, it's smooth. And this is like not even oiled up or anything. But yeah, anyway, so I'm going to bring in the camera a little closer, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the specific features. Alright, so if you ever come across one of these rifles in a pawn shop or gun shop or something like that, the absolute easiest way to identify it is this special magazine. It's a box magazine. To my knowledge, there's nothing else like it that exists in the world, and it's very interesting. And part of that is because you don't have to put the cartridges under any kind of spring tension or anything. You just drop them in. That's it. And then it uses some kind of Danish magic. And you're good to go. So it is a 5-shot mag, 5+1 if you do one on top. And I don't know what kind of Danish magic they use, but as far as I know, it's impossible to get rim lock with this rifle, and I don't know how they do it. And if you don't know what rim lock is, basically rim lock is one of the reasons why we went away from rim cartridges. So say when you stack a cartridge, ideally you're going to stack them like this. The bottom one's always going to be forward of the top, or actually it's going to be the other way around. The bottom one's always going to be behind the front one. So when the front one strips, it goes off, and then the next one go. Now if you accidentally put it the other way around, this top one can't strip off the front very easily. Now I'm not sure exactly how Krag does it, or how they do it, but I'm going to try to actually intentionally do a rim lock situation here. So put a cartridge in, and let's intentionally put it like that. So it's intentionally like that, and oh, actually, okay. I tell you what, the problem is here is because I'm using cases. If I had full bullet, you know, full-length bullet on it, I believe the bullet itself is part of what actually helps keep it from doing that, the whole length of the cartridge. And I think it's the way that the magazine is curved around in there, it makes it to where it kind of sits staggered, and then you don't have to do it. And if you see, when the cartridge is set and ready to sit, that's what actually sits right there in the gun, off to the side, kind of behind this little plate here. Now, something that Krag did interesting is they have this little switch right here, and if you flip this down, put your cartridge in right there, you actually cannot pick up the cartridge. And the reason behind that is they wanted to be able to have it to where you had a full magazine loaded up, and then you could drop a cartridge on here one at a time on top of your full mag, and then you can shoot, which is kind of a neat concept. It's something that's been done a couple other times. There are multiple rifles that do have magazine disconnects on it, so you can do the exact same thing. So flip that down, go over some of the other controls. This is your safety right here. I believe up and over is not able to fire. You can't move the bolt or anything. Let's see, can you do it? Yeah. Up at all is you cannot fire. You cannot move your bolt. Now the way these take down is a little different than some other rifles. So you have to move your bolt up here, and then you have to actually lift this up. Let's see here. Or one second, let me see here. Yeah. Sorry, it's a little hard to do this from that angle. So you lift it up, and then you keep turning the bolt to where you can get the locking lug straight up, and just like that. And then you can kind of pop this back where it needs to go, and there you can see everything. That's a little detent for that extractor there, and you can see that's right there's your trigger. I think this is what is this? I can't remember what this is. I think that has to do with the mag cut off, but I can't remember exactly. But to put it back together, same thing. You set the rifle down. You just lift it up, and rotate it off, and it kind of pivots on this pin like that, so you can take it all the way up like that. Okay, so that's the cutoff for the mag. So if you got it upright like that, you can't push mag in. You have to rotate it the rest of the way. There you go, and then together. So pretty interesting system. Something that, well, you certainly don't see in rifles these days. Usually most of the rifles that come out today are going to have a trigger disassembly catch, to where when you have the bolt back all the way, you pull the trigger, and the only thing really holding the bolt in is just that sear to fire it. Now, on the sights here, it does have just a regular, you know, blade sight up front. You know, some knurling on there for shine and whatnot. Some of these are hooded. It does, and this one here does not have the cuts for the hoods. The rear sight, this, if I remember correctly, I actually got this rear sight off of a 1904 one. And the reason why I wanted the 1904 is because it had a lot more adjustment stuff on it. A lot of the other ones just had the, you know, the graduated sights like that. But on the 1904s, you had this lever here, and you can actually do your windage as so. And then, of course, you can bring your sight up, and this is for your long-range volley fire. Now, of course, for 30-40 Krag, the cartridge that this is in, you're not looking at a super flat shooting cartridge. You have to remember this cartridge, when it was originally designed, was black powder. Like a lot of the other ones, and it's about equivalent to about 303 British, give or take, in power. Let's see here, the actual box here for this Remington core lock here shows 24-30 foot per second at the muzzle, 22-13 at 100 yards, 2006 at 200, 18-15 at 300, 16-32 at 400, and 1467 at 500 yards. Not exactly a slouch as far as velocity goes, but you have to look at the drops though. So at 100 yards, you actually raise up 2.8 inches, and it's actually zeroed for 200 yards, which is interesting. And then at 300 yards, boom, you go from 0 to dropping 11.5 inches right off the bat. 400 yards, you're dropping 33.6 inches, and at 500 yards, you drop 68.8 inches. So you really are just kind of lobbing them in there out past 200 yards. But that said, if you're shooting at only 200 yards, you can achieve some pretty decent accuracy with it if you really tried. The trigger on it isn't too bad. I really don't want to ghost the trigger. Let me see. I'll put a case in. And it is a cock-on open. Actually, no, it's a cock-on close. But it breaks open on cock-on open. So, put a case on in there. Close it on in. Hammer it back. Right off the bat, you're at the wall. You get a little bit of movement. Movement. And fire. So, not a fantastic trigger. I mean, pretty good for the time. But you have to understand, this rifle's 127 years old. So, it is what it is on that. Now, when I got this rifle at the pawn shop, it was in the exact same condition it's in right now. So, this was the Carbine model, which had the shorter stock on it. And it has it's supposed to have a hand cover that goes up here, which is missing. And I have been wanting to get one, because especially when you hold it with how thin this grip is, your hand does come up here on the barrel. But man, they're expensive, so I just haven't gotten around to it. It's not like on some of the Mausers where, you know, literally millions and millions and millions of them were made, and, you know, the parts are around. only about 500,000 of these were ever produced in the U.S. You can see somebody at some point filled in the sling swivel with, I guess, wood filler. They wrapped this electrical tape around it. I'm assuming because it's got looks like a slight crack right here. I'm not 100% sure. And then something else that's interesting, we have a couple notches on here. Now, notches are one of those things to where it's really hard, you know, people usually contribute notches on military surplus as kills. And yes, there are some recorded, you know, cases in which soldiers did in fact notch their grips or their stocks or something like that for kills, but it wasn't really all as common as people think it was. So just based off of the way these notches are made, I'm gonna say it's likely that those are deer kills on it. And it could be possible that this rifle was in the Philippines and those could be kills during that war. It's possible it could have been in Cuba and those could be kills from that war. It's impossible to tell. But, you know, it's kind of neat to know that somebody killed something with this rifle and notched it. Killed 4 or 5 things with this rifle. So that's kind of interesting to know. But, you know, what's cool about these things is, you know, they're 127 years old and they're still shooting just fine. And this one here is actually in great condition. I got a little rust on the barrel, you know, I could clean up, you know. But the rifling's great on it. Bluing's not bad. I'm almost willing to bet it's probably been re-blued at one point in time. When you get to these rifles like this that aren't complete, they got some bubba-ing going on here. Collector's value isn't really that high on them, you know, as far as what they are. But they are cool guns to take out and shoot. Now, that right there is the biggest thing, right there. If it didn't have those drill holes, this rifle would be a great candidate for a full restore to, you know, military configuration. But because of that, that destroys a lot of the collector's value on it. Because some dude, probably in the 30s or 40s or 20s, there's no telling when, you know, when these rifles weren't collectible and they were being surplused off, thought, hey, you know, I'm going to drill this on so I can mount a scope for it, you know, to make a deer rifle out of it. Unknowing for them, you know, all these years later, this gun is worth probably 100 times, you know, or 10 times, 20 times what he paid for it, you know. There's no telling how much. This guy could have bought, somebody could have bought this rifle for $5 back in the day, you know. I don't know if you ever seen any of the old catalogs and stuff like that, but, you know, they sold guns really cheap, but I digress. But anyways, really interesting gun, really interesting magazine system, really interesting action on these, you know, just neat old guns. If you ever get a chance to come across one and surplus bolt guns are your things, I highly recommend picking one up. Now, the biggest problem with this gun, number one problem with this gun, is the ammunition. This stuff is so hard to find. When I first bought this gun, there was literally none of it for sale for probably 4 or 5 months online. Now, you know, you can go to gun shows and you might be able to find it at gun shows. There's probably still some surplus stuff that people have privately floating around, but, you know, you're talking about a 100-year-old surplus, you know. Yeah, so I wouldn't trust that. Now, Remington does make a run of this stuff about once a year. And they make a bunch of it, they sell it out, all the Krag guys buy it up, and then it's gone, and you gotta wait another year to get it. I believe Sentry is getting ready to start producing as well, which would be nice, because I could, you know, add some more. But you have to understand, this stuff's so antiquated, and these rifles are so old, that most companies don't see it profitable to even make this ammunition. So, if you do get it, reloading is going to be your best friend. As you can see, I've saved every shot that I've fired out of it because I do plan on reloading this eventually. But, you know, it's stuff's hard to find, and then when you do find it, it's they don't sell it super expensive. It's about comparable to, you know, any other kind of specialty, you know, ammunition. I think I paid, I don't know, $50-something a box for this. Yeah, I think I paid like 50 cents a box. But then again, you have to deal with online shipping. So that's something to always consider if you come across it. Now, if you're able to find one of the ones that are 6.5 by 55 Swede, that's a completely different situation. That stuff is a lot easier to find. You can find that stuff online all the time. You can always order it. There's a lot of Swedish Mausers and hunting guns floating around that are going to be floating around for a very long time. So that cartridge is not going anywhere. You know, millions of rifles chambered in that. So if you can get one in 6.5 by 55, I definitely say go ahead and do it. Now, something I've considered is, because this particular rifle is not in any kind of collector's condition, I have considered finding a barrel that's a 6.5 by 55 barrel, or having one custom made, and then finding a 6.5 by 55 bolt. As far as I know, swap the bolt and the barrel, and these should be good to go for 6.5 by 55, and that would make a rifle that's a lot more shootable, and you know, at least you can go out and shoot it. Now, if this rifle was in full military configuration, everything was nice on it, I mean, you know, normal surplus condition, but everything was complete on it and no drilling in it, then yeah, I wouldn't consider doing that. But because it's like this, you know, it is what it is. Eventually, I'm going to do some work on the stock, pull the stock off. I might completely cut off this whole section here that's cut off with duct tape to shorten up the stock a little bit. Might dig out this wood filler, see what's going on under there, and you know, see what I can do about making it nice. Put a rubber butt pad on it. It's been sporterized, kind of, so the least I can do is try to make it look good. So I can cut the stock a little short, get this out of here, clean it up, get a top cover on it, and it's gonna look okay. I'm sure probably there's some specialty gunsmiths out there that could fill these in professionally and make it look like it was nothing ever done. And I might try doing that in the future, who knows, but with how it is now, I kind of don't have, you know, the interest to really go through and do that much with it. It's a fun shooter, but ammunition's so expensive and hard to find that I'm not going to shoot it a lot, which means I'm not going to give it a whole lot of attention. When I get to set up a bigger gun wall, it's going to go up on the gun wall. It's going to be visible, you know, as a wall piece, but, you know, that's really about it for this gun. But anyways, if you guys have any questions, you know, comment down below. I'll try to answer them best I can. And check us out on our new Utreon account that we have set up. That's our backup account, just in case YouTube decides to get all uppity with us and give us the axe. For the time being, it looks like we're okay. They stepped back some of those stupid rules that they just put out, but you never know. But anyways, y'all guys have a good one, and I'll see you next time.